Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, The Beautiful Stitches. I love you all and I'm glad you're here with me. Today we're going to be cutting a notched collar jacket. Okay, as you can see, this is my pattern paper. I've drawn out my basic bodice on my pattern paper. So I'll be labeling it. This is a back and I have the front panel. Okay, so let me label them so that we can start cutting our pattern paper. Okay. I've drawn out my measurement on my pattern paper. This is my back and this is my front panel. So whichever panel you want to start your measurement from is up to you. For me, I want to start with the front panel. At the center front and at the shoulder line, I kept some space for the lapel and the collar. Okay, this is my shoulder line, my neck line, and my upper bust line. This is my bust line and waist and hip line. Remember, I added 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, so we'll be making little adjustments on our pattern paper for us to get what we want. All right, so if you want to make your jacket a shoulder dart, if you want to cut it in with shoulder dart, you measure the shoulder and locate the midpoint, connect it down to the dart. And if you want it to be a princess cut, you also locate the midpoint of your armhole and also connect it down to the dart. Okay, my midpoint is 5.5. Okay, let me mark it out. We have 5.5. So I'll mark it out and then connect it down to my dart area. Okay, use a curve ruler to connect it to the dart, making sure the line is well curved. Okay, place your ruler correctly and connect it from the armhole down to the dart area. Remember, our dart, we came down 1 inch from the nipple line to create our dart. Okay, and at the waistline we went in by 1/2 inch on both sides. Okay, and for us to get our dart measurement, we used our nipple to nipple measurement, which is 4 plus 1/2 inch sewing allowance. We have 4.5. And remember, our pattern paper, I've already drawn our normal measurement and also added the allowances for the dart, for the sewing allowance of our princess cut, and also seam allowance. And what I added was 2 inches, 1 inches for the sewing allowance on the armhole side and 1 inches for the seam allowance. And on the waistline, I added 3 inches, 1 inches for the dart to replace the dart that was taken, 1 inches for sewing allowance, and 1 inches for the seam allowance. Okay, and the same thing I also did on the waist, on the hip line, sorry, also added 2 inches. Okay, so right now we'll be creating our lapel. So what we do now, we look for our break point. So before we locate our break point, on the hip line we mark out 1 inches. Okay, 1 inches, and then we go to our waistline, also mark 1 inches. Then from our waistline up, we can locate our break point at that point, anywhere from our waistline upward. You can also do it at your nipple line depending on what you want, but I want my own to be 2 inches away from my waistline. Okay, so I'll locate 2 inches and then mark out my 2 inches. Okay, here is 2 inches, and then also mark out 1 inches away from the 2 inches I just marked out now. Then square it down to the hip line. Okay, just as I'm doing it, you square it down. That is our break point. And remember, this is where we also fix our button. If we want to fix button for our jacket, that is where we, we'll fix our button. Okay, All right, so from this break point now, what we are going to do now is to draw a straight line and connect it down from the shoulder, okay, from the neck width at the shoulder area. So we'll draw a straight line, connect it down from that shoulder down to the break point, just like as I'm doing it. Okay, as you can see, it's gradually taking shape. All right, so this is where we'll create our lapel now. So what we're going to do now is to go at the neck depth. We come out by 3 inches, depending on how large you want your lapel to be. I want mine to be 3 inches. You can go further than that, or you can go lesser than that, and you connect it down from the neck depth down to that 3 inches line. Okay, from there you connect it down to the break point. You can make it a straight line, you can make it a curve line. I want mine to be a little bit curved, so that's why I'm using the hip curve to curve it out. Okay, so connect the line from the lapel down to the break point, just the way I'm doing it. As you can see, make sure you place your ruler correctly, place your curve ruler correctly. All right, as you can see, our lapel has been formed. You can see the difference. If you want to use a straight ruler, it will not be as it is now that I've used a curved ruler. Okay, all right, so now we are going to mark out our collar. So what we do now, at the neck width, you go in by 0.25 inch. Okay, you go in by 0.25 inch, just where I'm marking now, and connect it to the neck depth. Okay, this is for it to balance on our neck. Okay, as you can see, just a little curve, you connect it to that line. So what we do now, we connect from that 0.25 inch we marked. We're going to measure our neck line on the back bodice. Okay, you measure it out. So whatever you get from that measurement of the neck line from the back bodice, you impute it on the front bodice. Remember, we'll be connecting it together with the collar. So I have 3.5. Okay, so I'll be marking out 3.5 from the 0.25 inch that I marked out. Okay, let me mark out a straight line. It's not really a straight line. The line is, I think, 90 degree from the neck width. Okay, so let's mark out our 3.5 inches so that we don't exceed the line. So connect from that point down to the 3.5 inches, just the way I'm doing it. Okay, so from that point now, we'll come out by 0.5 inches again. Okay, and connect it down to the line. Remember, it's not really a straight line, so we want it to balance on our neck. We don't want it to be hanging. So what you do, you connect from that 0.5 inch down to the neck line again, to the original neck line, just as I'm doing it. Watch me and see what I'm doing. Okay, you can see we've connected it down to the 0.25 inch we marked out. So right now we are marking out our collar depending on what you want: 2.5, 3.5, 4 inches. I'll be marking 3.5 inches for my collar, and then connect it to the ½ inch that you moved away from the original line. Okay, just watch what I'm doing. As you can see, so connect it down now to the lapel area. But before we connect, from the center point, between the lapel and the neck depth will come out by 2.5 inches depending on what you want. I want mine to be 2.5 inches. You can also mark it out from the lapel area. Okay, so let's see the distance between the points and what I am marking out now. 2.5. So I have 1.5 inches space. Okay, it's okay for me depending on what you want. So let's connect it. 2.5 inches. Okay, from there we'll connect it down with our curve ruler down to the collar. Okay, as you can see, just the way I am marking it, you can see our collar is already out. It has taken its shape. Okay, so what we are going to do now, we're going to cut out the collar because we'll be placing it on the fabric to cut. Okay, and after cutting, before we cut it on our fabric, we add 0.5 inches sewing allowance. Okay, this is our collar. I've cut it out. Okay, so let's cut out the remaining part of our pattern paper. But before we cut it out, if you want your jacket to be curved, okay, from the break point area, you place your curved ruler from the break point area down to the hip region, and then curved, not really on the break point, from the center front you place your curved ruler and then mark it out. If you want your jacket to be curved, okay, you mark it down to wherever you want it to stop. And also you can use either of the curved rulers, but I prefer using this because this is not as curvy as the other curved ruler. Okay, that is by the way. But if you don't want it to be curved, you want it straight, you just leave it the way it is. For my own, I want it to be straight. I don't want it curved. All right, so what we are going to do now is to add 1/2 inch seam allowance on the shoulder line. Remember, on the fabric I'll be adding 1/2 inch allowance on the center front, armhole and the neck region before I cut. Okay, so this is our front panel. And also at the edge, at the side of the pattern paper, I'll be making a little curve. I'll come up by 1 inch depending on what I want, but I think 1 inch is okay. I'll come up by 1 inch and then connect it down to the hip line, the allowance on the hip line. This is because I don't want it to be pointed after joining my fabric. Okay, so I'll connect it just a little curve. Okay, I will not be cutting it out now. I'll cut it on the back pattern paper. Okay, so let's cut out the pattern paper. All right, okay, remember to cut your darts gently so that you don't make mistakes. Okay, this is our front panel. We are finished cutting. This is our dart. So let me label them out. This is my side front and center front. Okay, we are done with our front pattern. So let's move over to our back pattern paper. Okay, this is our back pattern paper. I told us from the beginning you can start from any one you want to, either the back pattern or the front pattern. This is my shoulder, my neck, my armhole, my bust line, waist and hip line. I've marked out all my measurements on my pattern paper. Okay, so I'll be making little adjustments just the way we did for the front pattern. Okay, if you want it to be a shoulder dart, you locate the midpoint of our pattern paper and connect it down to the dart. And also if you want it to be a princess dart, just like as I've done for the front pattern, I want it to be a princess dart. I've marked out my 5.5 inches midpoint, and then I'm connecting it to my dart. Okay, make sure your curved ruler is placed correctly. Okay, I'm connecting it to my dart. As you can see, our princess cut is ready. Okay, all right, so what I'll be doing now, I'll remove the bulge at the back. Remember, our back is not really straight. From the shoulder side down to the waist region is a bit slopey, so what we're going to do is in more than the other side of our back. So we are going to go in by 1/2 inch at the waist line, and then connect it down to the nipple points or the chest line, and also down to the hip line. Okay, I'll be using my ruler to connect it. Okay, just the way I'm doing it. Watch out. Connect it down to the chest line and down to the hip line. As you can see, the 1/2 inch, you connect it down. As you're going down, you see that when you get to the hip line, the 1/2 inch is reduced to more or less, it joins the waist, the hip line, sorry. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to add our 1/2 inch seam allowance. Remember, we'll be joining it at the center there, so add our 1/2 inch seam allowance so that we'll not run short of fabric when joining. Okay, connect it down from the shoulder and down to the hip line, just the way I'm doing it, and you mark out whatever you have drawn out, the 1/2 inch you have drawn out. Okay, just the way we are doing it. Okay, use your curve ruler and curve it out, making sure your line is accurate. Okay, as you can see. Okay, you connect it down to the chest line or the nipple line, and also connect from the waistline again down to the hip line. This is also going to give your jacket a very good shape. It's not going to bulge at the back. Okay, as you can see, let's cut it out. Okay, our back bulge have been taken off. So what we do next now is to mark out our 1/2 inch seam allowance at the shoulder line. Remember, before I cut it on my fabric, I'll be adding 1/2 inch on the armhole and cut on my fabric. Okay, and the neckline too, I'll be adding 1/2 inch on my neckline. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to cut out my back pattern paper, just the way I'm doing it. Cut gently so that you don't cut away from the marked point. As you can see, my back pattern is ready. Okay, this is our dart, and let's label it side back and center back. Okay, so we are going over to the sleeve right now. All right, okay, this is our sleeve pattern. Okay, for tutorial on how to cut a basic sleeve pattern or a basic long sleeve pattern, please check the description box. I'll be dropping the link below. Watch out for the full video and also other exciting videos. Okay, and also for tutorial on how to measure out your cap's height, everything you need to know about sleeve pattern drafting is there in that video. Okay, so this is the length of our sleeve. I'll be adding 1 inch seam allowance. Remember, when we cut on our fabric, our lining is going to be shorter than our fabric by 1.5 inch seam allowance. Okay, so this is our armhole. Our armhole is 9 plus 1 inch. We have 10 inches. We connect it down to the open sleeve. Okay, locate the midpoint. Our midpoint is 5. All right. Okay, come up by half inch and then connect it down to the end of the sleeve, the open end of the sleeve, and also make a little curve at the upper part of the pattern paper. All right, then also beneath the first curve, you make another small curve meeting the half inch or the midpoint where you came up by half inch, and then also curve it out again down to the open sleeve, just like as I'm doing it on my pattern paper now. All right, so we impute our horizontal measurements for our sleeve. Okay, my round sleeve is 14, measure out 7, and my wrist is 12. Okay, so 6.5 inch seam allowance, just the way I'm marking it out. Okay, so we connect it from the open sleeve end down to the elbow and down to the wrist. Okay, just the way I'm doing it. All right, so make sure your ruler is properly placed before you mark. Okay, I like using my hip ruler because it's not as curvy as the other rulers. Okay, so let's straighten out this part of our sleeve. It's looking a bit sharp. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do now is to cut out our sleeve. Okay, as you can see, so open it up and cut out the front armhole. Okay, just like as I'm doing it. Remember, you cut out the front armhole, you cut out the back armhole before the front armhole. So we are cutting out the front armhole now. Okay, okay, just the way I'm doing it. Cut gently, making sure you follow the correct markings. All right, our sleeve pattern is ready. Okay, you can see our sleeve pattern is ready. All right, so this is our pattern paper for our notch collar jacket. This is my front panel, center front, side front. This is that area. Okay, this is our lapel. As you can see, it's looking very beautiful. This is our front panel. All right, and the next is our back panel. This is our center back and our side back. As you can see, we have our princess cut both for the front and the back panel, and this is our dart opening. All right, and the necessary allowances have also been added to our pattern paper. This is my sleeve, a long sleeve, as you can see, with the necessary allowances. Okay, this is our collar. I've used it to cut out the main collar I'll be using for my fabric with half-inch seam allowance. You can see I put it on fold and cut it out. Okay, thanks very much for watching till the end. This is the end of our tutorial. Watch out for our tutorial on how to join this notch collar jacket. And if you're new to this channel, I want to say thank you for stopping by. But before leaving, please click the subscribe button. Don't forget to touch the notification bell to always get notified anytime I upload my videos. And also watch out for more exciting and educating videos on how to cut and join your pattern and how to cut and join your fabric together. Okay, so we'll be using this to cut out our fabric. Bye bye.